Today the topic is questions that shape us. The first two questions in the Bible are the foundation of all decision making. The first two questions are the pivot points, the hinges on which our entire decision making process turns. All we have and all we believe are linked to how we have trained ourselves to respond to these two simple questions. See, if we grow accustomed to ignoring these two basic questions, which we'll get to, these things that turn the mind, we're going to miss the opportunities that God has lavishly already set out there for us. But if we learn to hear Him, and if we can pick them out amidst our noisy volumes of internal clutter, we can live amazingly well. So, the two questions. The first question was asked by our subtle enemy, the devil, and the second was asked by our amazing Creator, God. And these two questions have set mankind on this well-worn path we now accept as life, as normal. And here they are. Basically, did God really say you couldn't have it all? And the second question, where are you? And I'll boil these things down, but the questions look something like this. Is God holding out on you? The serpent. Number two, what path of thinking have you decided to take? Creator. See, today we hear people mirror the question by which the devil instigated the fall of man. Quote, where was God when I needed Him? Have you ever thought that? Where were you, God? Where were you? You know, where are you now, God? Where are you when I need you? And see, how do we respond to God's follow-up question? See, the devil threw the first one out there. We'll get to this in Scripture in just a few minutes. But God followed that question up with another question. And within this question is the answer. Where are you? Now, God wasn't wondering where Adam and Eve had hid themselves, because He knew. God sees everything. He's everywhere present. He wasn't looking for that. He was asking them if they knew where they were at. If they knew the path they were on. What path have you decided to take, Adam? You know, how we answer the second question will determine our direction. And let's look at these two questions in a little bit different way than we may have heard before. Our lives depend on it. This is the turning point. What I'm talking about is the tipping point of every decision hinges on this first question. Every believer's decision, I should say. So question number one. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? See, the subtle trickery was not in the question, but in the expected response. It's at the exact point at which the serpent exposes man's mental Achilles heel. And this was written for a reason. This is the exact point that we too veer from God's sufficiency to our own, or to the world at times. Before we get into this original question which led the fall, have you ever looked up the Hebrew word for serpent? This will come into play. And it's an enlightening word. It's an enlightening word study for anyone who wants to figure out why we seem to have such trouble changing and such trouble staying changed. You ever set goals and the next year you set the same goal, the next year you set the same goal, next year you set the same goal? There's a reason. There's a reason. It hinges on these first two questions. Or we have a problem that we just can't seem to get out of. We start making money and then the car blows up. and it all disappears. See, the word serpent is used in many ways, and it's the Hebrew word nakash. You spell it if you want, N-A-C-H-A-S-H, nakash. And it means to hiss or whisper a magic spell, or to enchant, or to shine, or to learn by experience, or to diligently observe. To diligently observe. So the word serpent has all those things wrapped into one. Now remember that verse, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking who he may devour, 1 Peter 5:8. How does he know where to strike? How does he know where to strike? On you. How does he know? Yeah, have you ever heard of the term familiar spirits? And this is a dominant group of spirits who infiltrate, watch, gather, and catalog any information the devil, the serpent, the observant one needs. He's ever observant. And this observation process occurs during the entire lifetime of every single human being. You're not alone. You're not alone, folks. I mean, unfortunately, no matter how good you think you are, you're being watched. And he's looking for cracks in what we believe, in how we believe. You ever heard someone say, when things just couldn't have got any worse, they did? Or, why is it every time I'm down on my luck, problems seem to pile on? Or, why does my one child keep getting attacked in such different ways than the other ones do? Why? Why does bad stuff happen to good people? The reason is these familiar spirits are sent to uncover our weaknesses and proclivities. They tell their boss, he organizes the attack, and here we go. And the unsuspecting human thinks that he or she is just having a bad day, or bad week, or bad year, or bad life. And it all starts with that first question. So the original question that led to the original fall, the devil had been diligently watching these two special, spiritually energized, new style humans and discovered the chink in their mental armor. He finally saw the crack in their believing, and he was going to expose it. He was going to expose that. He'd been watching and watching and watching and watching, and these were perfect people. They never had a care in the world. But there's one thing that all humans need, is they need to know that their need is taken care of. It's just built into us. We have to be cared for. Care for ourselves, whatever, but we need our needs supplied. And there's self-talk exposed into self-doubt. And even perfect people worried about themselves. And this is interesting. There's many lessons to glean from this section, but I'm only going to point out the genesis of all turning points. And that's to one's belief in God's total sufficiency. This is where the whole pivot point is. Does God totally supply our need? He's everywhere present, or does he not in our mind, in that decision, in that goal? We have a goal to make X amount of dollars. We don't reach it. Why? So we blame God. We have a goal for some other thing in our life. And we can blame God in very innocent ways. We could just say, how come it just isn't happening for me? What's going on? Why is everybody else getting all the blessings and not me? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. See, there are many lessons to glean. Like, for From the Genesis 3:1 from the Message says, do I understand that, and this is what the devil said, do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden? Am I getting this right? Did he really tell you that he's holding something back on you? Is it true that God has forbidden you to eat fruits from the trees of the garden? That's from the Voice. Is it true? Is it really? I can't even believe it. I can't believe it. Why would the God who promised to supply everything, who's taken such good care of you, tell you you can't have that thing? And you want it. Did God really say I couldn't have what he promised? It's there for me. It's taken the rest of the Bible and millions of self-help professionals to help assist people in taking back the response to that first question. Do I really believe in God's supply? Do you really? Are you sure God said he will supply everything that you'll ever need? Come on. Everything? Come on. That's lollipop land. That's fairy tale. There's no way. How could anybody, anything, supply every one of your needs that you're ever going to have? That's the big question, folks. Couldn't God be holding out just a little bit on you? Couldn't he be holding just a little bit back from you because of that thing that you did that one time? What stops us? Is it because of what my daddy told me, my mommy told me, my grandma told me, my teacher told me, my coach told me? You know, will God really do what he said he would do for you? That's the first question. And if we don't get that one right, then there's no foundation for anything else in the Bible. Jesus Christ figured this thing out perfectly. He totally believed in God's supply. Need money to pay taxes. Okay, go fishing. You're going to catch a fish with a gold piece in its mouth. They went fishing, caught a fish with a gold piece in its mouth, they paid their taxes. It's that simple. They had to do something. I'm not saying you don't have to do anything. We know we have to work hard, but it still is supposed to be there. A lot of people work so hard, and it just doesn't happen. I guess right here there's a verse that I wanted to read. And it's just from Haggai chapter 1, and we're going to read verse 5 through 7 from the Voice. And it says, think very carefully about your choices. You've planted a large crop, but your harvest is still small. You've food to eat, but it's never enough to satisfy. You've something to drink, but you're never filled. You have clothes to wear, but they aren't enough to keep you warm. You're in a salary, but the money runs out quickly, as if there are holes in your pocket. Think very carefully about your choices. And this all hinges back to that first choice, that first question. The turning points in life are all about choices. It's all about choices. The great turning point in the Bible is in response to that first question. Did God really supply all your need? Did he really, absolutely, for sure do it? Or do we just say that because it sounds very Christian? See, the major turning points in the Bible, and there's a few of them. There's many, I just listed a few. Like the fall of Lucifer. That was a major turning point, right? You know, even he, the angel of light, the most beautiful thing ever created, thought he needed more than God was giving. It's basically the same thing he asked Eve. Don't you need more? he too doubted God's supply. And so you know what he did? He quit his current job as top angel. He wanted more. He wanted to be like the Creator. He wanted to be worshiped like the Creator. He wanted it all. And here's a prophetic view of our great enemy, past, present, and future. And this is something that the prophet Isaiah saw. Imagine seeing this. Imagine being able to visualize what I'm about to read. We're going to read Isaiah 14, 12 through 16 from The Voice. My, how you've fallen from the heights of heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. What a star you were, as you menaced and weakened the nation. But now you've been cut down, fallen to the earth. Remember how you said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven, reach higher and with more power, and set my throne high above God's own stars. Remember how you thought you could be a god, saying, I will sit among them at the Mount of Assembly in the northern heights. I will rise above the highest clouds and make myself like the Most High. Ha! Instead, you've sunk like a stone to where the dead abide. You've hit the bottom of the bottommost pit. People peer down at you from above, and their curiosity overflows. People, wow, is this the man who once terrorized the world? Is he the one who rocked the earth's kingdoms and threatened us with disaster? Is he the one who turned the bustling cities of the world into a wasteland and never let the prisoners of war go home? The fall of man. See, man's first missed opportunity was doubting God's ability to supply everything. Everything. And we've been struggling to get back to our garden, our promised paradise ever since. That was another one, the fall of man. Had to fall loose, the fall of man. That was another turning point. Another turning point is the flood. I wasn't going to say remember that, but the entire planet was covered by incredibly evil people. Remember, every thought they thought was evil. They thought about killing. They thought about stealing. They thought about hurting. They just thought anything that would benefit them is what they thought. They did not believe or expect in God to supply. They were going to take it. Who needs God when you got me? Who needs God when you got yourself? You see, they believed only in self. And only one man believed above the fray and the fear, Noah. And he protected his family and a few animals from the world's worst savages for 100 years or more. See, Noah absolutely and totally believed in God's supply. He had to self-finance, or should I say believe in God's ever-present supply, not just in the building of the ark, which took 100 years, but in buying forests, buying lumber, cutting lumber, having crews, holding pens for animals, storehouses for all the grain they're going to need for years and years. Plus, he would have, in today's terms, he would have long outlived his life insurance. He would have long outlived his personal retirement savings. He had 8 people to feed, to clothe, to heal, and to keep secure. Trust me, there were some evil people out there at that time. Would it be different for us? I mean, if God can take care of him so he could take care of others, what'll God do for us? Jesus Christ tried to show us that it's no different. What do you need? It's supplied. What do you need? It's done. It's supplied. You got to figure a way to find it. We got to get past that first point. Will God really supply? He's already supplied. It's done. Here's another turning point, the Exodus. The children of Israel had been enslaved because of their selfishness and sense of lack. And God, working in one man, saved them. 40 years in the wilderness taught the young people to once again trust God for food, shelter, clothing. Their clothing didn't even wear out. Think manna. It appeared every day, 40 years, every morning. And the cloud that overshadowed them so they wouldn't be in the heat of that desert they were in. The pillar of fire at night to give them light. And finally, taking back the incredible land that God had promised His people long before. Only the people born after they escaped Egypt were allowed to enter the promised land, except for Joshua and Caleb. Why? Because they had been trained to trust. They had been trained to expect God to supply their every need. If every day you woke up and there was manna there, pretty soon you know you didn't do it. They didn't grow it. It wasn't just, they just thought that was the way it is. God's going to supply. And then they went into the promised land and they took it. They expected God to supply. They knew nothing but trust. We have to change our minds to get that back. That's a type of paradise, to know. If you knew that every one of your needs would always be met, I mean, you really knew that. You had no more financial worries the rest of your life. Would you have a worry? Would you worry about anything? No. Would that be in your prayers every morning to make that money? I mean, we're so far from that first turning point, that pivot point. Does God really supply all our need? Yes. Now, the law of Moses, that was another turning point. It was given to teach people to regain trust in His supply and to control the selfish tendency of people who don't trust. Because when you don't trust, you're going to start trying to take it from somebody else. If I don't have what I need, I'm going to get it from you. That's what all wars are about. I want what they have. I need what they have. I'm going to have what they have. The entire Bible is written to help us get back to the garden of our souls, to get back to where we could have been before we blew that first question. Does God really have the ability to supply my need? Does He really, really, really have that ability? The answer is yes, folks. The New Testament says it's already been supplied. It's already done. The birth of Christ was another turning point. He was here to save people from a life of selfish despair, to think outside themselves. You know, the energized ministry of Christ, you know, that energized Spirit of God used to its fullest potential, combined with the pure essence of truth contained in the Scriptures, is a winning combination needed to defeat the influence of the enemy. See, nowadays it's going to take the Spirit of God to really do it, because the world is just so messed up. And we've been so mistrained. And we think it's normal. Normal is manna every day. Normal is paradise, all your need met. Not a care in the world. Be anxious for nothing. Isn't that what the New Testament says? Be anxious for nothing. Don't worry about anything. But we do. It's hard not to, because the world's trained us to worry. And when we worry, we're not expecting God's supply. This is the first part of every goal, every decision. The resurrection and ascension of Christ was another turning point. Big one, right? You know, because He rose from the dead and He beat death, that means that someday we too will do the same. The resurrection and ascension are huge. The day of Pentecost. There's Bible teachers that say that Acts 2 is the hub of the Bible. It's the hub. Everything led to that, so we could get that gift of Holy Spirit, have what we have now, this great mystery revealed stuff. It's called also the focal point of the Bible, that day of Pentecost. Everything led up to that. Everything throughout all history led to that one point. Now we have all the benefits of it. yet we get talked out of it. In less than 30 years, the first century church got talked out of it. And they saw crazy miracles. Of course, we have too. If you put them all together, you'd have a good book of Acts. The Acts of Mike, the Acts of Maureen, the Acts of Dave, the Acts of Josephine. You see, Acts of Dave and John. So, I mean, it's great. It's cool stuff. So, and then the gathering together, is that not going to be a pretty cool turning point? They're already making movies about that stuff. How weird will that be when the Christians just disappear and everybody else is still here? You know, like, what? They're taking vacation early. You know, I don't know I have no idea what it's going to be like. See, then the return of Christ, which happens after the gathering, you know, and then comes the judgment of the just and the unjust. And this brings about the end to the devil, the serpent, Satan. And when Satan is removed and taken out of the equation, then we will once again have the perfection of paradise. That's what I term the Satan effect. It all comes down to questions, folks. What are you willing to believe? And if no one posed these negatives at us, then we'd live in perfection. We could live close to it. Portions of our day can be that way. Why not? But it all starts with trusting that God supplied everything we'll ever need. Everlasting life is the final turning point, I guess. You know, don't know what happens after that. It's going to be a long time. Everlasting, long time. Now we're going to go to question number 2. So remember, question 1 is, do you really believe that God really supplied your need? Come on, guys. Oh, look at that. Do you have that? No, I'm not supposed to have that. Why not? That means God's holding something back from you. You see, when we blame God for our problems, we're doing the same thing. We've just fallen at the first trick, the first question. Now question number 2. And this one was asked by God. And remember, the answer is within the question. And so I'm going to get a running start on this, just so that it'll make more sense. So we're going to be chapter 3, verse 1. Of all the wild creatures, this is Genesis chapter 3, sorry. Of all the wild creatures the eternal God had created, the serpent was the craftiest. And serpent to the woman, is it true that God has forbidden you to eat fruits from the trees of the garden? Now, I know we've all been taught so many things. Just sort of take all that out of your head now and just listen to the essence of these questions. Eve, verse 2. No, serpent. God said that we're free to eat the fruits from the trees in the garden. We're granted access to any variety and all amounts of fruit, with one exception: the fruit from the tree found in the center of the garden. God instructed us not to eat or touch the fruit of that tree, or we would die. Serpent, die? You'll not die. God's playing games with you. The truth is that God knows that the day you eat the fruit from that tree, you will awaken something powerful in you. You'll become like Him, possessing knowledge of both good and evil. Isn't that what He wanted? 6. The woman approached the tree, eyed its fruit, coveted its mouth, watering, wisdom granting, beauty, and she plucked a fruit from the tree and ate. And then offered the fruit to her husband who was close by, and he ate as well. Suddenly their eyes were opened to a reality previously unknown. For the first time, they sensed their vulnerability and rushed to hide their naked bodies, stitched fig leaves into a crude loincloth. Then they heard the sound of the eternal God walking in the cool, misting shadows of the garden. The man and his wife took cover among the trees and hid from the eternal God. God calling to Adam, where are you? And the gist of this second question means is, what path have you decided to take, Adam? God knew where he was. Because Adam didn't go, right here, woohoo, yoo-hoo, God, I'm right here. You know, he said, what path have you decided to take, Adam? Where are you? Where's your head at? My path or his path, Adam? Make a decision. See, God knew where Adam was located. We know that. But he needed Adam to verbalize his choice. We should verbalize our choice. We should tell ourselves what we really believe every day. Now, Adam, verse 10. When I heard the sound of you coming in the garden, I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. I was afraid of you. A sense of lack always incubates fear. A sense of lack incubates fear. To feel naked is to feel exposed and vulnerable. Without God's help, we're all exposed and vulnerable. And with it, we're more than conquerors. We're unstoppable. We have exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think. We have prosperity, we have health. We have all sufficiency in all things, all the time. We're super conquerors. We have Christ in us. Adam. Adam was afraid because he was naked, so he hid. And see, without God, we're all exposed and vulnerable. And now here's God. Who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree in the center of the garden? The very one I commanded you not to eat from? See, now enters the third question. Here's the third question. Who told you that you were naked? See, the Hebrew word naked is very, very, very interesting. It's the root word. The root of that word is the word subtle. And that was the same word used to describe the serpent in verse 1. The word subtle in verse 1 is the root of this word naked in verse 11 and verse 10. It's translated as bare or smooth or cunning and crafty, like a smooth talker, Lies just flow off out of their lips easy. It's a no-brainer. When they try to sell you something, it's like, duh, I got to buy this. Sounds so good. In my office here, every time we have a salesman come, somebody hawking their wares, some kind of a plan that is going to make everybody rich, when they're done, it just sounds like you're a fool if you don't buy this or if you don't promote this to other people. And then when they're gone, you really think it through and you think, oh, there's a hole here, a hole here, a hole here. They left out this whole part. Smooth talker. So naked means smooth, crafty, subtle. And you'll get this in just a minute. Could it have been, who told you that you were slick, Adam? Who told you that you were that smart, Adam? Who told you that you were that smooth, Adam? Who told you that? How slick do you need to be? How cunning in your own mentality do you need to be, Adam? Wasn't that the original sin? The fall of Lucifer? He was too cool for school. He was too slick, to be under the tutelage of the Creator. If you think about it, that has to be part of what this is. That exposure, they got caught. He too wanted to be like the Most High, like the Creator. He too thought he was slick and crafty and witty, like that shiny one, the serpent, portrayed himself to be. Adam. So God said, who told you this? Who told you you're slick? Who told you you're naked? Who told you you're cunning, Adam? It was she. Verse 12. The woman you gave me as a companion put the fruit in my hands, and I ate it. And women have been blamed ever since. See, Adam was correct in pointing out that it was his wife's stupidity which got him into the mess. He followed her. I'm not going to make a comment here for fear of sleeping alone. See, Adam was right because she's the one who did give it to him. She's the one who first got deceived, but Adam was really wrong in blaming God for his problem. She's the woman you gave me. We're wrong when we blame God. Think about when all these catastrophes happen in the world, people always blame God. Where's God? In the 60s, is God dead? Just the other day in the paper, a couple of months ago, is God still here? So what that means, in a sense, they're blaming God for the problems of the world. How come you're not here to take care of everything, God? He is. He did. But we just have just slipped right into the adversary's boat. And we just go down the river, with everybody else on earth. It's a little harder to swim upstream, to walk the banks. God to the woman, verse 13. What have you done? I guess that's the fourth question now. What have you done? And Eve, it was the serpent. He tricked me and I ate. Little old me. God to the serpent. What you've done carries great consequences. Now, God doesn't ask the serpent the question. He just sums it up. Because he's gone. He's unredeemable. But Adam and Eve aren't. Most of humanity is not unredeemable. But the devil, the serpent, made sure he was. He will never be redeemed. He can't be. So there's no reason to ask him a question. God already knows why. Because he's just flat out evil. Just summed it up. The serpent, the devil, the observant one, he doesn't respond right there. He just slinks back into the shadows and into the shadows of our thoughts. He says, now you're cursed more than cattle or wild beasts. You will writhe on your belly forever, consuming the dust out of which man was made. You're stuck to this earth, buddy. And as 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. Verse 15, Genesis 3. I will make you and your brood enemies of the woman and all her children. The woman's child will stomp your head, and you will strike his heel. And it's the first mention of the coming Christ in the Bible right there. And I bet that sent a shiver down his timbers. Galatians 1:4 says, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil world, according to the will of God and our Father. See, Jesus Christ came, he gave himself for our sins, for our pivot points, our bad decisions. So we can be delivered from this present evil world. heavy on the word present. That means there's something we can do now. It's not just someday. 1 Corinthians 13:19 says, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness." There's that word crafty again. That's subtlety. If we can somehow tap into the Word of God, if only there was a written Bible or something that we could go to, or Bible on tape, or verses we could actually memorize. If only that stuff was available. Gosh, wouldn't it be great? If only we had this special Spirit of God that would give us direct access behind the curtain and right to the heart and the arms of the Creator, the Protector. If only we had something like that. Whew, man, would we have an advantage. See, finally, Romans 12:2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Renewed mind, it's every thought. Remember that verse, "Bring captive every thought to the obedience of Christ"? That's the hinge. Does it fit? Is it the world's way or is it the Word's way? It's always the pivot point. That's our fulcrum. That's our tipping point in every decision. Did God supply all my need? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, let's believe it and go get it. If the answer is I don't know, then you're right where Eve was. And then we're going to seek what the world has to offer, just like Eve did, just like Adam did. And then the second question is, where's your head at? What path are you on? What path have you chosen? The easy way of the world or the way of God? The way of truth, the way of light, the way of love, the way of peace. Be not conformed to this world. Don't give in, folks. That's the whole battle. So in closing, the first two questions in the Bible are the foundation of all decision making. The first two questions are the pivot points, the hinges on which our entire decision making process turns. All we have and all we believe are linked to how we've trained ourselves to respond to these two simple questions. If we grow accustomed to ignoring the two basic questions that shape our lives and our believing process, we will miss the opportunities God has lavishly set out for us. But if we learn to hear them, and we can pick them out amidst our noisy volumes of internal chatter that happen all day long, we can live amazingly well, folks. It's always the questions that shape us. God bless.